Welcome to the Virginia Beach Central Library event for art exhibit and meet the artist for David Gwaltney. David Gwaltney is a local artist, and he will be showing a presentation of his slides of his artwork, which is digital art. My name is Sandy Hopkins. I am an adult services librarian at the Central Library in Virginia Beach, and I have also with me Robert Kennedy. He's the volunteer art coordinator for the Central Library. On the screen, you'll see his contact information where you could find out more about the annual call for entries we have for the Central Library Art Gallery. And now, at this time, I'm going to turn this over to Robert, who is going to give us a background on the artist and introduce the artist for us. Go ahead, Robert.
Thanks very much, Sandy, and thanks to all our viewers for joining us. We are pleased to have with us David Gwaltney, a multimedia artist who specializes in iPad digital painting. David is a retired, award-winning advertising art and creative director. After earning his Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in Communication Arts and Design from Virginia Commonwealth University, he began his career as a graphic designer in the Atlanta Design and Illustration Studio, Graphics Group, and Whistling Dixie. A devoted Mac fan, David works on the Apple iPad Pro using the Procreate app to create hand-drawn, original, signed and numbered limited edition prints and digital paintings on canvas. Over the years, he has participated in numerous art shows and festivals throughout the Hampton Roads area. David's digital painting, A Spot in the Universe, was selected as the 2018 Boardwalk Art Show poster. Also won gold and silver awards from Hermes Creative, Graphos, and Marcom in 2019. David has made a visible presence in the local arts community with his artwork selected for the Public Utility Box Art Project in Virginia Beach's Vibe District, the Points Drive-Through Art Gallery in Norfolk. He lives in Virginia Beach. His work can be viewed on his website, dgwaltneyart.com, and in person at the Artist Gallery in Virginia Beach, located in the Vibe District at 532 Virginia Beach Boulevard. David, thanks very much for joining us.
Hi, welcome. Thank you very much. And welcome to my art world. This first piece was a little piece I did on the first iPad that I got in 2010. It was called Too Many Turtle Doves in a Pear Tree. And I kind of use this for like Christmas cards. That was one of my first graphics. The second, it's called The Crabs in the Caribbean, into Mexico, where construction never seems to be finished. They just keep adding on to it, and whatever paint's available, that's how they paint it. This piece is titled The This piece, the Look Downs, was very graphic, was influenced by the African and Caribbean and Mexico art, very colorful. Also, I was incorporating one of my basic design elements, and I call it the the element, the balance of three. And you'll notice that through a lot of my work, you may see three items. You might see three color shifts. You might see one, two, or three items may be different, the same size, or maybe different sizes. Red permit. And again, I design, just had a lot of fun. I'm an active fisherman, avid fisherman. And this piece, most of these pieces were 13 by 19 inch sizes. Piece titled Calico Crab. I used the layers feature on the Brushes app, and my work, it makes the work almost look like a serigraph, which is an artsy word for silk screens. I used to do these back in the 70s, and if you know anything about silk screen process, it's laborious, takes up a lot of space, a lot of time, and dealing with hazardous chemicals on cleanup. And sometimes the end result wasn't worth the entire effort. This piece and the others were printed on a Epson 1900 wide format printer. I use the Epson Ultra Chrome inks. These are pigment inks, they're not dye, so they don't fade. Epson rates them over 200 years. And what's unique about the prints I make, whether I do one print or I do 10 prints or I do 500, each print is an original because it's pulled from the original file. So they're kind of unique how this one came about. I mentioned the element of three. This one particular piece, you'll notice basically three color shifts balance out the work. This piece was greatly influenced by the colorful African and Caribbean art, and is titled Juju Man. The Juju Man is a spirit doctor in West Africa, and of course down in the Caribbean, he's a witch doctor. And you probably ever heard the expression is just either good or bad juju. The piece was inspired by song lyrics of a U2 song called Breathe that was from their No Line on the Horizon album. The lyric goes 16 of June, Chinese stocks are going up, and I'm coming down with some new Asian virus. Juju man, Doc says you're fine or you're dying. So nothing like lyrics forecasting the future. As I got more comfortable using the brushes, I have started using more of their brushes, and they offered at the time probably about 10, maybe 15 brushes that were available. And I moved more to a painterly style from the graphics look. And this one happens to be called Bluebird Morning. This is my granddaughter, Jocelyn. I started playing around with some portraits. This one is called Shore Break. Of course, I live near the ocean, so I needed to produce a couple of what I call beach scenes. This work at this point forward, almost all the work is produced on the iPad Pro, which is a much larger unit, and this was using an Apple Pen and the Procreate app. This one is titled Daybreak After the Storm. This piece I wanted to capture the dark blue, black sky clouds that at first light was starting to break on the horizon. This first sketch I did of this did in about 5 minutes. This one is titled Neptune Arising. This is about as close as I get to painting lighthouses. I think I've got this aversion to doing them. It's just about every little gift shop or someplace, there's always a painting of a lighthouse. The next series of works is I call the Fantastic Creatures. These were inspired by the soft, out of focus, atmospheric paintings and backdrops of the portrait paintings of kings and aristocrats, military figures of the 16th through the 18th century. I chose to paint animals, giving them some human characteristics. The soul of the key to painting these and make them is getting the eyes and so where they look realistic. And at this point, most all my work has now kind of shifted to almost to an illustrated look. This piece is the Hornbill Princess. I give a nod to the self-taught French artist Henri Rousseau with the which he did these elaborate primitive jungle backgrounds. Though he traveled with the avant-garde in Paris, he never really profited from his work. And the balance of three of these, if you'll notice, there's that balance, what I call the element of three. If you notice the tall trees above the jungle, it's kind of tie the sky and the jungle and the piece together. This piece is called The Walrus and the Gull, and with a close-up detail. And I kind of, with this piece, was the first piece I broke my promise about the lighthouses. In the rocks over on the shoulder, over the shoulder above the gull's head, there's a lighthouse in the fog. Our Procreate app is that, and with the predecessor of the brushes that I used previous, I have the ability to create minute detail that I can enlarge up to 6,000 times, allowing me to change color, even color of a single pixel. The DPI, or the dots per square inch of brushes, was only 72. With the Procreate, I use it into 300 to 500 DPI. And of course, you'll notice in the detail with the meerschaum pipe and then the smoke turning into dolphins. This piece is Quoth the Raven, based on Edgar Allan Poe's Raven. They're known to steal, especially shiny objects, clothing, and materials. And the detail on of course, on the right shows the amount of detail that you can able to do in basically in a very small painting. And actually, you'll notice that one of the little shiny metals that he took is actually the bottom is a fennel from a spoon. Next piece is the Admiral, with the detail of the ships in the bottle. Another light, and of course, I broke my promise again. If you look in the lower detail corner, there's a lighthouse in the fog. This piece I call The Country Gentleman. This ram's horn, I was really kind of fascinated when I saw a picture of this ram's horn, and I really kind of accentuated it and twisted it a little bit to form a heart shape. This piece I call Happy Bear Day. It's a little fun piece that I send out for Christmas, birthday greetings, and emails and Facebooks to friends and relatives. This is the Marco. This is the national goat of Pakistan. I just love, when I saw this animal, I just love the spiral horns. And I had to try and catch the light. And then the faint background, you can kind of see the Himalayas. But I asked to be I kind of pictured him as a high priestess. And I said, you have to excuse the Celtic symbols on the robe. And because I have no idea what they mean, but I really like how they looked. This piece is the Fennec Fox and the Hounds. as the fox and the hound seem to have no clue as to where the fox is. And I really worked on getting that golden light. This piece is called Bubo the Buccaneer. A bubo isn't a scientific name for the great horned owl. It was also a mechanical owl in the movie Clash of the Titans. And I give kudos to anyone that can turn its head 270 degrees. Now, this painting I call Songbird, as one of 3 paintings for the Artist Gallery Notes of Color show. This is Close Encounters of Moorish Idols. I like the silhouette of the people viewing these floating fish as if viewing some alien life form. I wanted to have an appearance of an old lithograph that you might find in an old science book. Just for your information, the Moorish idols are strikingly brilliant color. They're actually black and yellow with a little white stripe, but they're a reef fish from the Indian Ocean. Mine were probably more dead. This piece is titled Dark Shadow. Was painted in the December of 2018. I had this vision of a dark hooded faceless figure coming out of this sort of out of the east with this rising of the sun emerging out of an apocalyptic misty background. Kind of now that I look at it, it's way too creepy as the figure and the medallion take on an appearance of the COVID-19 virus. Some things you can't explain. This piece was called The Lion, Fish, and the Emperor. It was a series kind of called Verge of Extinction. And I produced about 3 or maybe 4 paintings on this. And with this piece, you get my 2 cents worth of climate change and invasive species. This fish is highly poisonous and is indigenous to the South Pacific. But thanks to aquarists, hobbyists that had these in their aquariums, when the fish got too big, ate everything in the tank, instead of just disposing of the fish, they released it in the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean. And the next thing you know, it's on all the reefs in Florida and the Caribbean, decimating the reefs. It's now as far north as Connecticut. And with the change of the temperatures, not inconceivable at some point that this fish would be challenging the emperor penguin that lives in the Antarctic. This is the last buffalo hunt. There was a massive herds of once millions of buffalo that ranged over the entire American continent. They were subsistence of the American Indian. Now the Indian is confined to a reservation and the buffalo to a national park. This painting that I produced, I saw a photo of it, was of a 150-year-old skull. Just thought it was really unique looking. This piece of The Verge of Extinction was about, I had been reading about the droughts in Africa. And so this was about the climate change of the droughts. And the fish asking the Maasai shepherd that has no livestock where the water is. And you see over on the right-hand side, you see the elephants and the antelope kind of trailing off towards the sun. This piece was an ode to Buckminster Fuller. Fuller was an architect, designer, inventor. He actually designed the invented the geodesic dome. The Allen B. Shepard Convention Center on Pacific Avenue in Virginia Beach was based on his design. And at a seminar, he once posed a question for future generations. What do you do with the highways when the automobile becomes extinct? And so I saw this photo of this really rusted 40 Ford. And you see on the left-hand side, a bridge that just kind of drops off to nothing. Foreground, there's a highway that close up on this. You'd see potholes and grass and all growing out. And over on the right-hand side, there's a route sign 66 with bullet holes in it. This is what I call one of my what if series. You know, the expression, and I'd heard a weatherman refer to this one time when we had a torrential downpour. He basically said it was raining cats and dogs. And I was going, oh, what if it rained something else? And this particular piece I call Raining Acorns. And why not Picasso's? This painting was done for the Artist Gallery's show called Fabulous Forgeries. And this is like a Picasso within a Picasso. I actually painted these 10 paintings of Picasso full size and then inserted them into the painting. Each of the paintings actually kind of represent his different periods of his paintings. There are 10 paintings. There's actually 11th. I put an Easter egg in one of the paintings, and it was a portrait of Gertrude Stein. And with Stein, she was a friend and a major benefactor to Picasso and a lot of the avant-garde artists at the time. And also, you can imagine he probably sampled some of Alice's brownies. Gertrude had a phrase that she quoted in one of her books that she wrote. Said, "A rose is a rose is a rose." Sometimes I have a problem with trying to figure what color. This was also was based on the Kiss on the Rose, is what I call it, on the Singer Seal. And this was the theme song for Batman. But sometimes I can't decide what color it needs to be. So I did a blue one too. This one is called Raining Olives and Pimentos. This is Chef Chez Moussi, just a little fun piece. I picture some of these probably being used for an illustration book at some point. This piece is I call Duck Duck Samurai Goose. Why not rain ducks and geese? What I really liked was this detail on the samurai suit, but I kind of added a Viking hat with a really twisted horn on it. And this one is called Raining Carrots. Also very, just a very small piece. This was the first I did called Raining Sheep. After finishing this piece, I felt that I didn't quite capture the character of a border colony, which they seem to have an extreme case of ADHD. So I redrew it. This one I titled Bahram U. This was the secret code of the movie Pig. As he was herding sheep, the nice collie just bowling up the middle, sending them flying. I produced about 5 abstract works that I tried, and I call these pieces deconstructions. And this one is titled Hurricane in the Yucatan. I actually took the Crab Shack condo piece that I did way back in about 2010-11 and digitally altered it, and by not only altered it, but what it's called liquefying it, and put it back together. This next piece, this was the origins of jazz. This piece is called Wasteland. And this one I call the tragic end to a comedy. And the ending with the battle of heaven and hell. This piece was painted for the gallery's Follow the Light show, and it's titled Genesis 1. And the idea of this butterfly as a human coming out of a light. And so Genesis 1 is God said, let there be light. And it was good. This piece came about. Saw the photos of these elaborate hairstyle these women were having done with coloring and stuff like that. And I envisioned it as this giant anemone. This piece was produced for the Notes of Color exhibit at the gallery, and it's titled Big Man Clarence. And Clarence Clemens was a Chesapeake native, and he was a founding band member of Bruce Springsteen's E Street Band. And concluding with Wolfgang's Brain. And this again was the last of the show.
Thank you very much, David. We appreciate the presentation. Very creative and very interesting. I was wondering if you could go into maybe just a little bit more detail about the technical process of creation. For example, you mentioned paint brushes, I think.
Yeah, brushes. Yes, there was an app that was produced in 2010 called Brushes. It did not have a stylus at the time. You actually used your finger to do the painting. And I called it, when I produced the piece and people were looking at it, I called it Lessons Learned in Kindergarten. It's called finger painting.
Nice.
And so when the new iPad came out, I stuck with that original for about almost 7 years. And then when the new iPad came out, the Pro with the Apple Pen, that's when I had to go back and take a learning curve, because now I was no longer drawing with my finger. I had to actually draw with an instrument.
Okay, so you learned this all yourself, self-taught as it were, I guess. And do you have any suggestions for anyone who would be interested in learning this technology?
Yeah, it's just a matter of you start playing with it. A lot of my early creations, I was just a matter of throwing down color and sketching it and deleting it and adding to it. And then all of a sudden I'd see something evolve, and then I'd start working. Unfortunately, with the old Brushes app, you could actually record every stroke that you did, so you could actually play back a movie. That was kind of unique.
Sure.
But the Brushes app, after a couple of years, they changed it to an app called Reduct Brushes. And they took something that was so simple and easy to use, it turned into something extremely complicated. But this Procreate app, it took me, I would say, a good month or so to get a good feel for it. But I use it extensively now, and I love what I can do with it. I can do layers up to about 20, maybe 23, 24. I can also set the size of the canvases, any size that I want to work at. And of course, you can set your DPI also. So it's a lot of flexibility and unique things with it.
Well, that's great. And the detail is very, very impressive. And you mentioned the layering there and so forth. So thank you. That's helpful. And I love all your work, and particularly the anthropomorphic animals. And you mentioned Rousseau, Picasso, particularly Rousseau, as kind of a general inspiration. Do you also get inspiration from literary sources, or your travels, or just your vivid imagination?
Yeah, a lot of times you see a lot of the fish. Like I said, I'm an active fisherman. And I just like the graphics look that I can get with those. Down in Florida, down in the Caribbean, my work has always been commented about the really bright colors, cheerful colors, and that was kind of nice to hear that it made people feel happy.
Yeah, that is always good. And I was very pleased when you mentioned perhaps using them, or maybe you just meant one in an illustrated book. but I had wondered putting them all together in a book format, maybe even combining with some verse. I don't know if you or your wife are a poet, but any thoughts?
For and then kind of got a working title. It's called Unfinished Short Stories and Other Tall Tales. Um, and in the process of maybe writing some stories to go with the illustrations. And the Raining series, I've got enough there to do something with. But like I said, my work has now taken a little more illustrated look. And I guess it's going back to the roots of when I worked back in graphics group in Atlanta. I worked with 6, 7 other illustrators. I was like the only designer there, and the rest of them were all illustrators. So I had some great resources to draw on.
That's great. We look forward to the book. Definitely keep us posted. I was also curious if you ever print on high quality paper and canvas, if it's possible, or if you to print on other surfaces.
Yeah, I can't do it. The nice feature about having my own printer is that I can control the entire process. I have absolute control of the printing. Yeah, you can print on glass. It can be printed on metal, stuff like that. These images, of course, at the DPI that I'm producing, I can go quite large. With the old brushes, I generally couldn't go over 40 or 50 inches without it starting to pixelate, just because I couldn't do anything over 72. And when you started to blow it up, it got really coarse looking.
Okay. Actually, do you have any advice for aspiring artists, not just digital, but just in general?
I would say, is I do other things. I mean, I've really gotten in the last year, I've gotten into clay. Um, I really like glass. Of course, glass is a very expensive process, and it's not something I can do here at the house. I would really like to do some more glass work. I do some sculptures from time to time of other materials. I haven't produced anything recently, but it's one of these things you kind of have to get your hands, your hands dirty. In other words, go ahead, try something. And as you keep trying, you will find that you will improve each time. That first year I had brushes, I probably produced somewhere about 200 paintings and sketches and stuff like that.
Wow.
There are probably 200, 150 that I don't want to show anybody because it was a whole learning process.
Of
But,
course. Of
but
course. All artists experience that. So,
yeah,
well, thank you very much again for joining us, David. We really just loved your work and enjoyed and learned from the presentation.
I really want to thank you and the staff at my Orpendorf Central Library, particularly you, Robert and Sandy, for your assistance and your patience, particularly trying to do this, and the opportunity and giving me the opportunity to showcase my work. And of course, if anybody has any questions or comments, I can be reached at the Artist Gallery or online or on my website. All right, thank you again very much. I greatly appreciate this.
Our pleasure. Thank you.
I'd like
Sandy?
to, yes, in ending this presentation, I'd like to thank Robert Kennedy, our volunteer art gallery coordinator for the Central Library in Virginia Beach, and David Gwaltney. Thank you so much for sharing your art with us. It's wonderful to see what creative work can be done with an iPad. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right.